White Fang by Jack London, Chapter 19, Abandoned. White Fang's life with his new master went along smoothly. There were no beatings, plenty of food, and many kind words. Still, it took White Fang a long time to adjust. The wolf continued to bare his fangs at other dogs and was still nervous about hands coming too close. His new master never lost patience, though, and White Fang slowly learned to accept his new way. Although he did not wag his tail or whine with excitement when Weedon approached, he showed his affection in other ways. Even though it was Matt who fed him, White Fang was devoted only to Weedon. Matt put White Fang back to work on the sleds. He liked pulling the sled and happily did his best. Every day the team went out to pick up supplies or inspect the area. This was much easier work than with Gray Beaver. They covered less distance and the loads were lighter. He worked well with the other dogs, but still kept his distance. There were no fights this time. Matt would not allow it. He pulled apart any animals who tried. One morning his master went off on his own sled. Weedon often spent the days working elsewhere, so White Fang was not worried. This time, though, he did not return in the evening and was still gone the next morning. The other man did not seem bothered. Matt worked the dogs as usual, taking them into town to pick up supplies. White Fang, however, was growing worried. When Weedon was still gone after several days, he refused to eat. He sat on the porch of their cabin, whimpering. He pawed at the front door, hoping his master would open it. But his master was gone. White Fang started to feel that familiar sense of mistrust. His master had disappeared. The wolf suddenly felt forgotten. Matt was worried about the wolf's health, so he brought him inside. He wrote a letter to Weedon telling him about White Fang. The wolf won't work. He won't eat. He wants to know where you've gone. White Fang lay on the floor near the stove without interest in food or Matt. The man tried talking gently to him, but it did not matter. It was Weedon that he wanted. Late one night, Matt was startled by a low whine coming from White Fang. He was on his feet at last, his ears cocked toward the door. A moment later, there were footsteps on the porch. The door opened, and Weedon stood before them. "Where's the wolf?" he asked. White Fang was standing near the stove. He did not rush forward like other dogs. He stood watching and waiting. "By George," said Matt, "look at him wag his tail." Weedon stepped quickly across the room and knelt before his wolf. He rubbed his hands through his fur, while White Fang sounded his crooning growl. And then, quite suddenly, White Fang thrust his head forward. He pushed his way in between his master's arms and body. Weedon wrapped his arms tightly around him while his wolf continued to nudge and snuggle. White Fang was changing. He was learning to do things that other dogs took for granted. Wagging his tail, greeting his master at the door, and snuggling in close. He was learning how to love.